They say Guam was discovered in 1521, but I don't know how you can discover a place where Chamorro people have lived for 3,000 years.
Hi, everyone. We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
You are incredibly welcome to our channel, conversation, kind of space on the internet where we like to have the chats, as the Irish would say. We're both social scientists with a deep appreciation and passion for talking about culture, both popped and lived, and how being curious about culture can help us be better people, just flat out. And we've been doing it for a long time. We have these conversations off air and just between us, and we turn on the various recording devices for you. So if anything we are talking about sparks I'd love to say something to them, please do. We'd love to hear it. This video is a specific series, but I'll tell you, we've got a whole bunch of others where we also talk about the cultural aspects of very popular streaming television shows. We also have conversations where we actually talk to living humans, which is really exciting, and not characters. And I do a whole interview series about curiosity. There's lots of spaces around our channel to connect with us, and please don't hesitate to.
So we've been having a lot of conversations about history and culture, especially over the last few years. And we keep coming back to this idea of colonization. And our realization at the start of 2021 that we really don't talk about the continued impact of colonization enough. And problematically, we talk about it as if it's something that doesn't still happen or isn't still happening or impacting cultures. Thus, we launched our Colonizers World Tour, of which this video is a part of that series. We are, flying around the globe, learning about different places, how they were colonized, how it impacts them. And then we love to pick, if possible, a piece of art made by people from that place and made about it. And today, for our Guamanian film, we are covering the 2016 short documentary, American Soil, Chamorro Soul, which was written and directed by Jessica Peterson. You can find it on Vimeo and rent it from Jessica Peterson. So please do, and give her money so she can hopefully keep making more films.
Seriously.
And the guts of this film, it's 25 minutes, and it highlights several groups of people on Guam who are doing their darndest to reinvigorate, reimagine, preserve, and protect Chamorro culture, which is the indigenous culture of the Mariana Islands and specifically of Guam. So she does this by speaking to a lecturer on Chamorro studies, Michael Lujan Bavacqua, but then also a lovely man named Ron who's building canoes and has grown sailing culture. Then a lovely man named Frank who is kind of inventing and teaching Chamorro dance.
Love it.
And then a lovely young woman, I can't remember her name, who is looking at the medicinal aspects of healing from the island and the way they can change their relationship with the land. So those are the kind of three areas that they focus on: canoes and sailing, dance, and natural medicine and healers, as a way to explore how these humans are, fighting against the ever coming tide of colonialism to preserve what they can of Chamorro culture. Dr. Kristen, what would you like to share about this beautiful film?
So many things, to be honest, but the one that keeps sticking out to me over and over again is that the absolute, I don't know what to do with the word resilience. Let's be really honest. I'm often ambivalent to it and kind of how we throw it around. But that was the word that resonated in my soul throughout this whole thing. The people of Guam refuse to let Chamorro culture die, despite a lot of attacks upon it by the colonizers, not only the United States, but also the Japanese and the Spaniards throughout the colonization history. Guam was colonized, for anyone who didn't catch our video yesterday, which, by the way, we break down the basics of Guam. So head back in the playlist if you're joining us newly today. But they've not been sovereign over their own land since the 1500s. And that is an absolutely unbelievable disruption to the relationship between the land and the people. And so the resilience of, we're still going to be Chamorro, we're still going to be Guamanian, we're still going to reclaim what is ours. I also love the idea that the dance is a big part of it, because I always love when art and bodies are used to talk about it. And I made a note of the Sheraton Hotel where I can see this dance show, because I have a lot of often questions about the Disneyland Polynesian Resort and the dances you can see at Disney World, and the kind of epcotting of most of the planet, to be honest. We talked about it when we went to Killarney together, that I feel like Killarney is Irish Disneyland. It's not actually indicative of Irish life. It's what everyone else wants Irish life to be. So there's thatch cottages and a lot of stuff like that. And so I wonder a lot about how we can engage as responsible tourists. I want to see these dances. I want to hear these songs. I want to hear these stories, but how do I engage in a way that doesn't continue to colonize and flatten, and doesn't continue to impart my opinions of their culture upon them? And this video brought that into really stark relief, that there's a way to do both, that there's a way to preserve it poorly and a way to preserve it well, and that we kind of have to walk through those things. And I know we talked a little bit about the need to be responsible tourists offline. Yeah. And so that was something you also picked up on.
Yeah. And I think it was, so interesting to see such a astute analysis of culture and what it is. And Michael, as the academic voice in this, was really good at breaking down how culture is made and how we view culture. And that, so much of their indigenous culture had been destroyed and oppressed and erased because of colonization. And so they didn't have records of what Chamorro dance looked like. And the dances that they had learned were Spanish influenced and Polynesian influenced and all of these things. And so to see their process of rediscovery and to recognize that culture can be reimagined. Culture is what we say it is, and we can build something that is ours, even if we don't have the historical record of its originality, which was really beautiful. But I think the thing that I also want to talk about is one of my soapboxes these days, but the use of passive voice is a tool of the colonizer. And we've talked about this in some of our other videos a little bit, but it's really stark in this short documentary that and Michael makes this point that the language we use around culture is that it is lost. Traditions are lost, they're forgotten, and that implies like a passivity that the people who belong to the culture aren't invested in maintaining their culture, which isn't true, and passive voice removes accountability. So if we say that Chamorro dance was lost to history, we don't have to talk about colonizers. We don't have to talk about the impact of the Spanish and the Americans in limiting that cultural production, changing it, destroying it, all of those more active words. So I think that's the thing that I took away from it is, be really careful the language that we use about culture, especially as it relates to colonization or marginalized groups. I mean, we still just say like, women are lost to history. The contributions of women are forgotten and lost. No, they're excluded and erased. Like, we have to activate that language so we can be honest about it. And I think that the fact that the documentary brought that out for Chamorro culture was really cool. And the dance instructor was just straight up calling out the tourism industry for their role in cultural misrepresentation, which is a huge thing. And I think that's the other big takeaway that I will take to our next stop on the Colonizers World Tour is to remember that lens of who's representing the culture, who's profiting off of that culture. And they talk about in this video that, you know, most of the resorts on Guam have Polynesian dancers because that's what people want and that's what draws crowds and that's what makes money. Again, the Disneyfication of cultures around the world. But, you know, we implore you to be intentional and respectful and educated tourists wherever you go. And to make sure now that we have all this information available that you do your due diligence before you go attempt to experience a culture that is not your own. And please give money to this filmmaker. It's like $5 to rent this film and spend 25 minutes with lovely Chamorro people doing their darndest.
Yeah. Which that transitions really well into the conversation about who tells what story, because the next place we're heading isn't really to a place, it's to Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking about LGBT queer stories around the world and what that looks like. But just as a minor note right now, if you're looking to buy materials or t-shirts or things that support Pride, the best place to do that is Etsy and not your local department store, because Pride was a riot, started as a riot, and we'll talk more about that next week when we talk about the history and movement of different Pride celebrations around the world and how the most famous ones grew and where it all started. And the answer of why it happens in June is tied back to the Stonewall Inn, which we'll get into next week.
Yeah.
But it's important to, it's not just local cultures or like cultures tied. Right. It's all cultures all subcultures need to be treated and interacted with intentionally and respectfully.
Yeah.
And Pride is no exception.
Yeah. Cultural misrepresentation is affects all marginalized groups, whether they're in, you know, more embedded in a culture or outside of it. And what a great transition for us. We don't plan these, folks, but it just works out because we're that smart. But I'm excited to explore queer life around the world. We've got 4 fantastic films to learn and grow from. But instead of doing a 101 for our first week, because we'll be back in Japan and we've already done a Japan 101, you'll find it in the playlist. We're going to be looking at global queer life as kind of an overview, top-down perspective. So we'll be all over the show, but please join us next week for that.
It'll be a toe dip into a wild and wonderful world that often, I know from talking to folks, feels overwhelming. You don't know where to start learning anything about it. So what we're going to do is give you a 10 to 15 minute video that is an amuse-bouche of the places to start. And we can't wait to do that with you. Like Dr. Aaron said, we're hitting Japan and the history and lived experiences of queer folks in Japan first, and we'll see you then.